Hey, sis. Sophia chirped, her voice bright with a kind of giddy confidence that usually meant she'd done something reckless. So, I maxed out your credit cards. But don't worry, Mom and Dad said you'd understand. I just closed on my dream house. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. I was standing in the middle of my one-bedroom apartment in Chicago, still in my work heels, staring at my phone as credit alert after credit alert popped up. The total $48,000, all charged within 24 hours. You always play it so safe, Isabella, she continued, breezy and oblivious. And I've been working so hard on my influencer brand. You know, I needed a space that reflects that, something inspirational. Honestly, this place is perfect. Mom says it's about time I had something of my own. I sat down at my kitchen table, carefully closing my laptop before I crushed it with my hands. I took a breath, then another. When's the housewarming? I asked, my voice steady, even though my chest felt like it was cracking open. This weekend you have to come. I mean, you basically bought it, she laughed. That same carefree laugh that had gotten her out of everything since we were kids. She hung up before I could respond. For a few minutes, I just sat there, letting the silence crawl over me. The window buzzed with city noise, but inside everything felt still. My hands were trembling, but not from panic. Not this time. This wasn't shock. This was clarity. I opened my laptop again, not to check the charges, not to cry. I opened a folder I'd labeled some time ago. Contingency. Sophia. Inside, at camera footage, flagged emails, notarized alerts. I'd been preparing for this moment, even if I didn't want to admit it. Even if I still hoped she might change. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was Mom. Isabella. Sweetheart, please don't be upset. Sophia really needed this. Think of it as a gift. You'll be fine. You always are. I stared at the screen, then back at my files. Maybe they were right. I am fine, just not in the way they expect. I opened a blank page and started writing out a list, not of what I'd lost, but of what came next. It wasn't the first time Sophia had taken something from me. The first big one was the college fund. I was 18 packing for campus when Mom sat me down with a brittle smile and said, "We had to help Sophia with her boutique idea. She's passionate, Isabella. You're so good with numbers, you'll find a way." I did. I picked up 2 jobs and lived off microwaved soup for 4 years. Then came the car. My first real one bought after 3 years of saving. Sophia asked to borrow it for a weekend trip. 2 days later, it was totaled and my insurance dropped me. She was going through a breakup, Dad said, handing me bus money. Try to be compassionate. Always the same refrain. You're strong, Isabella. She needs more. I believed it longer than I should have. I let it slide because I wanted to be good, the dependable daughter, the steady one. And maybe some part of me hoped naively that one day they'd see how much it cost me. But hope started thinning out some time ago. That's when I got a call from the bank, a flagged loan application in my name. I knew immediately who it was, and this time I didn't explain it away. I didn't confront her. I just started collecting. I bought cameras and placed them around my apartment desk drawer entryway computer station. I archived every suspicious email, saved every strange voicemail, and slowly the truth stopped being something I felt it became something I could prove. So, when Sophia called about the house, I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I opened the folder and watched a video of her a few weeks ago unlocking my front door with a key she swore she returned, flipping through my desk until she found my wallet. She held up my gold card like it was hers. I hit pause and stared at the steel frame. Her smile was wide, triumphant, like the world belonged to her, and I was just the supporting character keeping it funded. But not this time. This time, I wasn't cleaning up behind her. I was moving in front of her, and I knew exactly where to start. I spent that night combing through my files, every screenshot, every voicemail, every saved email from Mom with phrases like, "She's going through a lot, and let's not make it harder for her." One message even hinted that I wouldn't notice a little help being taken. They always couched it in concern, like what they were doing was love. But love doesn't require stealing behind someone's back and calling it support. I archived it all, organized it by date source relevance, a digital timeline of betrayal. Then I opened Instagram. There was Sophia twirling on hardwood floors in a video captioned, "Manifestation works. If you believe hard enough, the car dream house, the car blessed." In another post, she posed on the front steps with mom and dad, all matching pastel outfits, all teeth and filters. My name wasn't mentioned anywhere. Neither were the credit cards that paid for it. That might have been the moment something hardened in me. The house! That particular house. I knew that address. I typed it into our internal system at Benson and Clark, the investment firm where I'd worked for nearly a decade. My name doesn't show up publicly anywhere on the development, but I helped design the financial model for the entire community. I know the property manager. I know the real estate broker. I know which permits haven't cleared and how many liens exist on neighboring parcels. Her house, the one she stole from my future, was already sitting on ground I'd helped vet. I stared at the property file for a long time, feeling that strange blend of fury and power rise in my chest. They thought they'd pulled something over on me, but they built their dream house on a foundation I helped pour. And they were about to find out what happens when the quiet one finally decides to stop staying quiet. Sophia had posted a kitchen reveal video featuring white marble counters and gold fixtures tagging half a dozen interior brands. The caption read, "Can't believe this is real life. Proof that if you leap, the universe catches you." The universe apparently had my credit limit. In another post, she posed in a silk robe with a coffee mug writing "Morning Light" in my forever home. Hits different. It hit me differently too, like a punch in the ribs. Meanwhile, Mom and Dad had gone from evasive to pushy. "We just need you to sign the refinancing paperwork," Dad said over the phone. "It's a technicality. You're already on the credit lines anyway, so this would just make things cleaner." "You always make things smoother, Isabella," Mom added. "And Sophia's under so much pressure right now with all the attention. Can't you just support her quietly for once?" I smiled even though they couldn't see it. "Of course, I'll bring everything to the housewarming party." "Oh, good," Mom sighed. "We'll have the papers printed. You can sign them there." They had no idea what I was actually bringing. I met with a real estate attorney, with compliance at my firm to clarify legal ties to the development. I had notarized documentation security footage stills printed in color and a signed statement from the property manager confirming the buyer's name and funding source. I slid everything into a thick manila envelope and placed it carefully in my work bag. Let them decorate their lies. Let them sip sparkling wine and toast to false triumphs. I'd be there on time, polite and smiling. But I wasn't showing up to celebrate. I was showing up to collect. The driveway was lined with SUVs and imported sedans. Someone handed me a mimosa before I even reached the front door. The house smelled like new paint and expensive candles, the kind that tried too hard to suggest peace. Isabella Sophia squealed, rushing over in a silk wrap dress that probably cost more than my rent. "You came! You have to see the upstairs bathroom. It's like spa vibes." She pulled me into a hug like nothing had happened, like she hadn't broken into my apartment and drained every card I owned. I smiled and hugged her back. "I brought you a housewarming gift," I said softly. Her eyes lit up. "You didn't have to. I mean, technically, you already did." She giggled. I raised my voice just enough. "Actually, I think this is something the whole family should see." A few heads turned. I turned toward my parents, standing near the dining room sipping champagne. "Mom, Dad, you too." They exchanged a glance. They recognized my tone. The one I used the day I discovered Sophia took my college fund. It was the voice I used when I stopped asking and started acting. A hush settled as the room filled in around us, party chatter fading to murmurs. I pulled the manila envelope from my bag and set it on the marble kitchen island. "Sophia," I said calmly, "since you believe in sharing blessings, I thought I'd share something too." One by one, I pulled out the printed still security footage of her. In my apartment, her hand on my wallet. Copies of my credit card statements showing the charges. Screenshots of her Instagram posts time-stamped and notarized. Emails from my parents suggesting I should be flexible with my financials. My mother clutched her glass like it might shield her. My father opened his mouth, then shut it again. "And finally," I said, laying down the last page, "a legal breakdown of what you're looking at. Credit card fraud, identity theft, and breaking and entering plus aiding and abetting. Sophia stared at the papers like they were in a different language. The color drained from her face. "You're joking," she whispered. I met her eyes. "No, I'm finally serious. Around us." The guests stood frozen. No one reached for a refill. No one laughed. "I told you I brought a gift," I said. "Now it's time to open it." And then I reached into my bag again, and this time I pulled out the real decision. I placed the second stack of papers on the counter, neat and heavy. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You have two options," I said. "Option 1, you sign over the deed and agree to a repayment plan in writing notarized. Every dollar you stole comes back with interest. Option 2, I hand everything over to the police, including the video, the emails, and the forged signature from last year's car lease." Sophia's mouth parted, but nothing came out. Her eyes darted toward Mom, then Dad, then the papers. "This is insane," she finally breathed. "We're family." "That's exactly why it's gone this far," I said. "Because no one ever tells you no." "I was going to pay you back," she whined, her voice already fraying. "Once my content starts picking up again." "No," I cut in. "You were going to wait for me to forget like I always do." Dad stepped forward. "Isabella, come on. Jail time over some money." "It's not just money," I said. "It's everything. The entitlement, the lies, the fact that you stood by while she robbed me and then asked me to sign more away." Mom sniffled. "We didn't mean harm. We just wanted both our girls to be okay." "You wanted her to succeed at my expense," I replied, "and you expected me to absorb it quietly like always." Sophia's hands shook as she hovered over the document. "You'd really do this to me," she whispered. "To your own sister." "You already did this to me," I said, calm as stone. "And no one stopped you." I watched her face shift. Anger, shame, confusion, then fear. Real fear. She turned to our parents, pleading with her eyes, but they said nothing. For the first time in my life, they had no script. I pushed the pen toward her. "You choose Sophia. This isn't revenge. It's boundaries." Her fingers curled slowly around the pen, and for the first time in years, she looked unsure of what came next. I let her sit with that uncertainty, 'cause that's where growth begins. Sophia showed up to the signing 15 minutes late, flanked by our parents like they were storming a courtroom. Her usual glam was dialed down, muted colors, no lashes, just enough to play. The part of the misunderstood sister, but her eyes still had that old spark, the one that always meant she thought she had an angle. "I have something to add," she said, pulling out a folder and sliding it across the table toward my attorney, Rebecca. Before we go any further, Rebecca opened it without flinching. Inside was a photocopy of a contract dated some time ago, bearing my signature, apparently co-signing any future business debt Sophia took on. Isabella agreed to support my ventures. Sophia said, "That includes financial backing. This house falls under that umbrella." My parents nodded like they were in a rehearsal. Dad even folded his arms with a smug little smile. I picked up the page, studied the signature, then looked at Rebecca. "Show them," I said. Rebecca turned her laptop toward the table. On screen, grainy footage from my old apartment. Sophia at my desk holding a printout, pausing, then slowly tracing my signature over and over until it matched. She practiced it 8 times. "I've known about this for years," I said, keeping my voice level. "I kept the footage. I kept everything." Sophia's mouth opened. Nothing came out. "You forged my name," I continued. "That document means nothing. And now that you've tried to use it to manipulate legal proceedings, it's evidence of attempted fraud." Rebecca slid the real transfer papers forward again. "Shall we continue with the original agreement, or are we taking this to court?" For the first time, Sophia looked genuinely small. The room felt heavier now. No smugness, no backup plan, just consequences. She didn't touch the pen. Not yet. I leaned back in my chair, hands folded. I could wait. I had waited for years, but this time I wasn't the one squirming. The silence stretched too long, broken only by the ticking of the clock on Rebecca's wall. Sophia stared at the papers like they were written in another language. Her hands hovered uncertain, waiting for someone to save her like they always did. Dad cleared his throat louder than necessary. Sign it. Sophia blinked at him. What, you heard me? He said, voice low and flat. Sign the papers, Sophia. This is done. Her face crumpled for a second, not in tears, just disbelief. Like the one person who'd always bent the rules for her had finally stepped outside the game. Mom leaned forward, her voice soft and trembling. Isabella, she didn't mean it this way. She gets caught up in things. You know how she is. I do, I said, not unkindly. And that's exactly why I'm doing this. But she's your sister, and I'm your daughter, I said. That never seemed to matter when I was the one cleaning up the mess. Sophia lowered her head. Her fingers picked at the edge of the folder, still not moving toward the pen. I didn't say another word. I wasn't going to beg for closure she didn't deserve. Dad walked over, picked up the pen, and dropped it in front of her. Enough, he said, like he was talking to a child who'd finally pushed too far. Sophia's signature was messy, almost. Angry, but it was real. No practiced lines, no fake flourishes, just her name exposed and vulnerable for once. Rebecca notarized the documents. I watched as each page became official, binding, irreversible. Mom wiped at her eyes, but no one reached for her hand. Dad stood with his arms crossed, looking at the floor. I gathered the papers, carefully folded them into a new envelope, and stood up. No dramatic words, no parting shots, just the weight of finality settling into the room. As I walked out, no one followed, no one called after me, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for leaving them behind. It's been some time since the signing, some time since I walked out of that office with a folder in my bag, and the weight of my family's expectations finally lifted off my shoulders. Sophia never went to jail. I didn't press charges. She signed everything stuck to the repayment plan and surprisingly held up her end. Every month, like clockwork, a payment arrives. No late fees, no excuses, just a quiet transfer from her account to mine. She has a job now, a real one. Marketing associate at a small local firm. Not glamorous, but solid. Her Instagram looks different too. Gone are the luxury shots and faux deep quotes. Now it's photos of coffee mugs beside spreadsheets. Captions like, budgeting is self-respect and financial literacy is healing. Sometimes I scroll through them and wonder if any of it is real. But then I remember at least now she's pretending in the right direction. Dad called some time ago. He didn't try to justify anything, just said he was sorry that he'd started seeing a therapist, that maybe they failed both of us in different ways. It wasn't everything, but it was something. Mom didn't call, but she left a voicemail last week. She sounded tired, not from anger, but from understanding. You were right, Isabella. She needed to fall, she said. We never let her. That's on us. I saved the message. I haven't replied yet. Some days I wonder what would have happened if I'd stayed quiet again, if I'd signed those papers, if I'd swallowed it all just to keep the peace. But then I see the changes. Not perfect, not fast, but real. And I know that silence would have cost all of us more than we could afford. I opened the banking app on my phone. The most recent deposit is there. Sophia's note attached paid early this month. Thank you. I type a simple reply. Received. Take care. And close the screen. It's not forgiveness, but it's enough to keep walking forward. The house sold in the spring just before the tulips came in. A young couple with 2 kids bought it first-time homeowners, eager and wide-eyed. I left the welcome packet on the counter with a handwritten note. May this home hold more honesty than mine ever did. The profit covered my remaining balances and the legal fees. I didn't keep the rest. I put it toward a down payment on a small condo downtown. Just enough space for me. Sunlight in the morning and quiet at night. No cameras, no locks on desk drawers. No folder titled contingency. I didn't need a backup plan anymore. I wasn't waiting for someone to betray me. The promotion came through last quarter VP of Strategic Finance. My boss cited how I handled complex internal conflict with integrity and clarity. I almost laughed. I didn't tell him the conflict wore my last name. Sophia still texts once a month with her payment receipts. This time it came early. Her message was short. Payment sent early this time. No emojis, no excuses. I typed back, "Thank you. That's our rhythm now. Professional, distant, clean. Mom and Dad invite me to dinner. Sometimes I go. We talk about the weather and books and what therapy is teaching them. We don't talk about the house or the signature or the silence that lasted for decades. But I sleep well, not because everything is perfect, but because for once it's real."
The voicemail came in just before midnight on a Thursday, when the world felt half asleep and I was standing at the kitchen sink, rinsing leftover takeout containers. My phone lit up with Mom, and a pang hit my ribs, the kind of automatic fear you get from years of someone who could love you and cut you with the same breath. I let it go to voicemail. I couldn't bring myself to pick up. Then I pressed play. Her voice was steady, clipped, as if she'd practiced it. "You're out. I'm done with your attitude and your drama. Don't come home again." That was all. No goodbye. No explanation. No love. My name is Natalie. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because the second those words hit my ear, something in me, something I didn't know was even awake, came alive. They'd written me off. Finally. I stood there in my tiny apartment, water dripping from my hands, and felt a calm settle over me that I hadn't known since I was a kid. "You're out." "Fine." Noted. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and grabbed my laptop from the counter. My fingers were shaking, but not from fear, from relief. See, they thought they could cut me off after using me for years. My name on their shady side business accounts. My squeaky clean credit co-signing their dream house. My power of attorney just in case they needed help. They'd built a kingdom on my good name.
And tonight?
I was taking it back. I pulled up the documents I'd quietly gathered for months. Revocation of power of attorney. Signed. Removal from the family trust. Confirmed. Notification to the bank to freeze all accounts tied to my signature. Sent. And the final blow. The mortgage deal for their precious McMansion. The one that would have made them look like royalty at the next HOA party. Terminated.
Click, click, click.
I swear I could feel my ancestors cheering me on from somewhere in the ether. They wanted me out? They could have all of me gone. When I finished, I closed the laptop and finally let myself breathe. For the first time in 29 years, I was free. And when I woke up the next morning, 79 missed calls. 36 text messages, flipping between pure rage and syrupy guilt. And a voicemail from a number I didn't know. I hit play, half expecting more of their shrieking. A man's voice, tight with panic. "Miss Natalie, this is Attorney Raymond. We'd have a problem. Please call me as soon as you can." I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my cold coffee. A problem? Yeah. For once, it wasn't mine. I set the phone down, the lawyer's words still ringing in my head like a badly tuned bell. "We have a problem." They'd said that to me my entire life. Every time a bill came due, every time a secret threatened to break free, every time their pristine image cracked under its own weight. "We have a problem," which always meant I had to fix it. But this time, they could fix it themselves. I poured another cup of stale coffee, breathing in the silence of my tiny apartment. My apartment. No one had ever taken this from me. No one had ever guilted me out of it or signed it away behind my back. This was my sanctuary. Outside, the city was waking up, car horns, sirens, the low hum of a garbage truck rolling down the street. I stepped out onto the balcony, letting the air hit me, sharp and cold. I felt alive. Then I checked my phone again. More missed calls. Messages, stacking up like an avalanche. "Natalie, you're destroying us. We are your family. How could you? You'll come to regret this, mark my words." Family. They loved that word when it served them. When I paid the bills. When I signed my name. When I stood in front of their bad choices like a human shield. But the moment I stopped serving, I was drama. I was selfish. I was out.
Fine.
I was out. And it was the sweetest liberation I'd ever tasted. My phone buzzed again, another unknown number. For a second, my stomach knotted, the old fear flashing through me. But then I remembered whose name was on the accounts now.
Mine.
I answered. A woman's voice this time, clipped and professional. "Miss Natalie, this is Wellsworth and Associates. I'm afraid there has been a legal complication with a family trust. Your removal was processed without advance notice to your parents, which is being contested. We would appreciate your cooperation in. I didn't let her finish. Everything I did was legal, I snapped. You can talk to my attorney. She tried to recover. Ma'am, your parents are very distressed. I laughed. A hollow, rich, exhausted laugh. They'll live. And I ended the call. Because they'd lived off me long enough. Inside, the apartment felt brighter, warmer. Even the cheap Christmas candle flickering on my counter felt like a new beginning. They had called me a problem solver my whole life. Now, they'd have to solve their own. And I would watch every frantic move they made from the safe, quiet, perfect distance of my own peace. The rest of that morning was a blur of more calls, more threats, more pathetic attempts to claw back what they'd lost. But I had finally figured out their playbook.
They didn't want me.
They wanted my signature. They wanted my good name, my clean credit, my willingness to swallow every insult and keep performing the dutiful daughter routine. And I was done performing. I opened my laptop again, scrolling through the legal confirmations. Everything was airtight. My lawyer, a sweet older woman named Maria who'd seen 1,000 stories like mine, had triple-checked every line before I signed. Maria's words echoed in my head. Natalie, when you take your name off this, they will come for you. They will weaponize guilt. Don't let them. I'd promised her. I wouldn't let them. My email chimed. Subject: urgent. Family trust complication. I clicked it open. Miss Natalie, we have received notice from your parents disputing your withdrawal from the family trust. They allege you acted in bad faith and left them financially vulnerable. Please contact us within 24 hours to clarify your intentions, or the matter may escalate to litigation. I sat back in my chair, staring at those words. Litigation. They really thought they could sue me for refusing to bankroll their house of cards? My laugh was ugly this time, more like a bark. I thought about that night, how I'd stood on their front porch last year for Christmas, carrying a homemade pie and a stupid wish for kindness, only to have the door slammed in my face because I wouldn't forgive a $50,000 loan they refused to repay. I'd promised myself then, standing in the cold with tears freezing on my cheeks, that I would never stand on that porch again. And now I was keeping that promise. They wanted me out? I was out. Out of the trust. Out of their plans. Out of their reach. They could lawyer up all they wanted, but I wasn't paying to save them again. A knock rattled my apartment door, jolting me out of my thoughts. I peered through the peephole, heart jumping. No way. It was my mother, in her expensive winter coat, hair perfectly styled, like she'd just stepped out of some designer photo shoot. She had driven all the way here. I considered not answering, but some perverse piece of me needed to see her face. I opened the door, just a crack. She didn't waste a breath on greetings. Natalie, she snapped, eyes blazing. What have you done? I raised my chin. Exactly what you told me to do. I'm out. Her mouth fell open, like no one had ever dared say no to her before. And I stood there, solid, steady, and utterly unwilling to be their doormat one more time. Mom stood in the doorway like a queen thrown off her throne, eyes flashing in a way that used to make me shrink back and apologize for simply existing. But I didn't shrink this time. She took a step closer, chin high, voice dripping ice. You've humiliated us. Do you understand? The bank called. The house deal is dead. Your father is furious. Everyone will know. There it was. The truth. Not you've hurt us. No. That would have required honesty. What she meant was, you've made us look bad. I felt a laugh bubbling up, but I swallowed it, my jaw locked. You left me no choice, I said calmly, feeling like I'd rehearsed this line 1,000 times in my mind. You used me. Over and over. I'm done. Her mouth twisted like she'd tasted something rotten. We built everything for you, she hissed. You think you could survive without us? Without this family? I almost admired her nerve. Mom, I said, letting the word hang in the cold air. The only thing you ever built on me was debt. And I'm not carrying it anymore. She tried to step past me into my apartment, like she owned it. I blocked the doorway with my shoulder. No, I said. You don't come in here. She looked truly shocked, the way a lion might look if the gazelle suddenly turned and bit back. For a moment, I saw every Christmas, every birthday, every moment she'd twisted my love to buy another car, remodel another bathroom, impress neighbors with the illusion of our happy family. I was done funding her illusions. Mom's hands shook.
We'll sue you, she spat.
We'll sue you for every cent. You can't just walk away. I smiled, not kindly. You go ahead. My lawyer's on speed dial. And unlike yours, she knows where all the bodies are buried. Mom's face blanched. She knew what I meant. All the shady paperwork. All the cash moved in and out to skirt taxes. My name was on half those documents, but I'd saved receipts of every single one. If they tried to burn me down, I'd torch the entire house with the truth. Her voice broke, finally, the polished queen's mask crumbling. Natalie, please. That please almost undid me. Almost. Because for a second, I saw the mother I'd wanted her to be.
The softness.
The love. But it was a trick.
I knew that now.
I took a breath, heart steady. Go home, Mom. She blinked, stunned. Go home, I repeated, and figure out how to pay for yourself. And then, with a gentleness I didn't feel, I shut the door in her face. For the first time in my entire life, I realized I wasn't scared of her anymore. I stood on the other side of the door, my heartbeat pounding like a war drum in my ears. For a long minute, I couldn't move. I just stared at the cheap apartment doorknob, half expecting it to twist, to rattle, for her to pound her fist against it and demand to be let in. But she didn't. Through the peephole, I watched her retreat down the hallway, shoulders hunched for the first time in my memory. She looked small, and I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I went back to my couch and sank down into it, feeling every bone in my body exhale. They had trained me so well. Trained me to jump at the first sign of disapproval. Trained me to fix every crisis, no matter how they caused it. Trained me to measure my worth in how useful I was to them.
And now?
I was unlearning. My phone buzzed again, this time a new number. I answered, expecting another lawyer. Instead, it was Maria, my attorney. Natalie, she began gently, I heard from their firm. They're threatening to freeze assets and sue you for breach of family trust. I snorted. Let them try. Maria chuckled, a warm, protective sound that steadied me. That's what I told them. Silence stretched between us. How are you holding up? She asked. It was such a simple question, but it split me open. I swallowed the sudden burn in my throat. I'm okay, I whispered. For the first time, maybe ever. Maria didn't rush to fill the silence. She let it hang, respectful. Then, gently. You know they'll keep coming, Natalie. They will not let this go easily. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I know. But I'm not backing down. Not again. We went over the paperwork for the 1,000th time. Maria reassured me every signature, every notarized letter, every legal motion was bulletproof. When we finally hung up, I let out a long, shaking breath. My phone lit up one more time from my sister. You're heartless. I hope you're happy. We might lose everything. I closed my eyes and held the phone to my chest. They still didn't get it. I had already lost everything in that house. Years of being belittled, used, controlled, piece by piece, they had stripped me of every sense of belonging until I was nothing but a walking credit score. Now they were the ones who would feel that emptiness. And maybe, just maybe, they'd finally understand what it was like to be left out in the cold. I stood, grabbed my coat, and stepped out into the winter air. For once, the chill didn't feel like punishment. It felt like freedom. I wandered the block for a while, letting the crisp wind sting my cheeks and fill my lungs. Every exhale felt like a prayer, a promise to myself. I will never go back. I will never let them do this again. The city was lit up for the holidays, shop windows glowing, strangers carrying wrapped gifts, the scent of cinnamon and coffee drifting from a nearby bakery. It should have made me feel lonely, but it didn't. It made me feel new. I passed a florist, its window crowded with poinsettias, and on a strange whim, I went in and bought one, a brilliant, red-leaved bloom. It felt decadent to spend money on something beautiful just for me. At home, I set the poinsettia on the kitchen table, then scrolled through the missed messages still waiting on my phone. "We trusted you. Your father is beside himself. How dare you ruin Christmas like this?" Ruin Christmas. I shook my head, a humorless laugh catching in my throat. As if Christmas had ever been mine to ruin. Every year, it was the same. I was the one buying presents with my bonus because they overspent. I was the one cooking the meal when Mom's catering fell through. I was the one smiling through their gossip, their snide comments about my job, my life, my choices. Every Christmas felt like a hostage situation where I traded my peace for a crumb of belonging. Not this year. I stood by the window, watching flakes of snow start to drift down again, soft and silent. It hit me then. They might actually lose the house. The trust was too tangled to survive without my name stabilizing it, and the bank had no reason to show them mercy now. For a moment, I imagined their voices, their horror, the way they'd scramble to blame anyone but themselves. It should have made me guilty, but it didn't. It made me feel just because I had warned them so many times. I had begged them to stop taking more than they could pay back. I had pleaded with them to leave my name out of their games. They hadn't listened.
And now?
Now the bill was due. My phone buzzed again. One final message from Mom. "We will never forgive you for this." I smiled, tracing the edge of the poinsettia's bright leaves. "Noted," I whispered, as if she could hear me. And I meant it, because I hadn't done this for their forgiveness. I'd done it for my own. By the next afternoon, the storm I'd set off was in full swing. My lawyer forwarded me a formal notice. The bank had frozen the entire trust, pending investigation. My parents would have no access to the accounts until they proved they could shoulder the debt on their own. The house deal was gone, ashes on the wind. I sat on my couch, the poinsettia glowing bright against the winter light, reading through the official words with a strange sense of calm. They had called me the destroyer, the traitor, the problem. But I wasn't the one who built a house on sand.
They had.
They thought loyalty meant I'd follow them straight into ruin, my arms outstretched to soften every fall. Not anymore. My phone rang, breaking the quiet. This time it was a local number, no mask, no block line. A lawyer's voice again, tight and clipped. "Miss Natalie, your parents' legal team is demanding you appear for mediation." I smiled, stretching my legs out on the couch. "No, thank you." The lawyer hesitated. "They're very upset." I almost laughed. "Tell them to get in line." I hung up, dropped the phone on the cushion beside me, and closed my eyes for a long moment. A part of me was still raw, still hurt. I couldn't lie to myself about that. There were memories I'd never get back. Birthday parties turned to arguments, Mother's Day brunches where I'd been told to try harder, family photos where I'd been cropped in on the edge like an afterthought. I had poured so much love into them, so much of myself, waiting for something real in return. But they had taken it again and again and called it normal. No more. I opened my eyes, looking around at my quiet apartment. The lamp I had picked out alone, the scent of cinnamon from the candle I bought with my own paycheck, the silly thrift store mug on my table. All mine. No one could repossess my peace. No one could foreclosure my boundaries. No one could evict me from my own worth. They could throw their tantrums, hire their lawyers, gather the entire extended family to shame me. I was unmovable now. For the first time in my life, their chaos couldn't reach me. And that was the kind of freedom I'd never put a price tag on. They say the holidays are supposed to bring people together. Maybe they do, for families who know how to love without strings attached, who give without expecting a blood sacrifice in return. But mine had shown me exactly what they valued.
It was never me.
It was what I could provide, what I could sign, what I could fix. So I let them burn. The final paperwork from Maria arrived on New Year's Eve.
Clean.
Irrevocable. My name severed, every loophole closed, every joint account erased from my credit report. It felt like a holy moment, seeing those signatures. Like baptizing myself in something pure, after wading through their poison my whole life. My phone still buzzed, even that night. Angry texts, then guilt-ridden ones, the pendulum swinging back and forth until I wondered if they even heard themselves anymore. "We can't keep the house without you. The neighbors are asking questions. You'll be alone forever, Natalie." I read each line with a sense of calm that bordered on supernatural. Alone? I had never felt less alone than in that moment. I had myself. I had my own peace. I had the knowledge that I could build something honest, something true, something free of their corruption. The fireworks started downtown, distant cracks and pops breaking through the night. I watched them from my window, poinsettia on the sill, its leaves glowing red under the strobe of the city lights. And I realized I didn't need their house, didn't need their trust, didn't need their holiday table with forced smiles and thinly veiled insults. I could build my own home, in my own way, brick by brick, boundary by boundary, with hands that no longer shook every time someone raised their voice. My phone buzzed one last time. A final text from Dad. "Congratulations. You've destroyed everything." I whispered to the window. The city. The world.
No.
I finally saved myself. And then I turned off my phone, leaving their noise in the dark where it belonged. The new year was about to begin, and for the first time ever, I was stepping into it clean. No more secrets. No more signatures. No more debts I didn't choose.
Just me.
Unapologetic. Unbreakable. Unbought. I raised a toast to no one but myself, a silent vow that I would never again trade my peace for a place at a table that demanded I starve to keep them fed. This was my story now, and I would write it however I pleased. I swear the world was ending when they wheeled her into the ICU. My daughter, my little Daisy, just 6 years old, strapped up to more wires than I could count, her small body barely visible under tubes and beeping machines that sounded like alarms screaming in my brain. 1 minute we'd been on the road singing along to Taylor Swift, Daisy's voice all giggles and off-key sweetness. The next, an SUV had slammed straight through a red light, crushing the side of my car and her tiny frame along with it. I hadn't even seen it coming. I hadn't even had time to scream. Now her hair was matted with blood, a small teddy bear clutched in her hand, its stuffing peeking out like a wound. I sat there in the sterile hospital chair, numb, shaking, praying to a God I wasn't even sure I believed in, begging him to please let her wake up. That's when my phone buzzed. A text.
Mom.
I thought maybe she'd ask about Daisy. Maybe she'd say she was coming.
But no.
"Bring cupcakes for your niece's school party tomorrow." I reread it 3 times. Maybe I was hallucinating. My fingers moved stiffly, bones like ice. "Mom, I can't. I'm in the hospital with Daisy. She's on life support." Another buzz. Mom again. So casual it made my heart break in a fresh, new way. "You always ruin everything with your selfish drama."
Drama?
My baby was fighting for her life. Then my sister chimed in. "Stop being so dramatic. Kids get hurt all the time." It felt like someone plunged a knife straight through my chest. Then Dad, his words the worst of all. "Your niece's party is more important than your attention-seeking. We're all tired of you." I couldn't even breathe. I looked up from those texts, back at Daisy's still, fragile body. They didn't see her. They didn't see me. They never had. They only saw what I could do for them, the errands, the emotional sponge, the second-hand mother to everyone's kids. My phone buzzed again, but before I could read it, the door to Daisy's room opened. The doctor stepped in, face solemn, voice grave. "Your mom," he began. My world, already falling apart, somehow found a new way to break. The doctor stepped closer, shutting the glass door behind him, the monitor's soft beeping the only thing keeping me from screaming in that dead silence. His eyes darted to my phone, still glowing with Dad's hateful message, then back to me with a gentleness that almost felt like mercy. "Your mom just arrived in the waiting room," he said carefully. "She demanded to speak with you." I almost laughed, a hard, ragged, humorless sound that scraped my raw throat. Demanded? Of course she had. It was always about what she demanded. "Is Daisy stable?" I asked, voice shaking so badly I could barely form the words. He nodded.
For now.
"We'll watch her all night. I closed my eyes in relief, even if it was the smallest sliver of peace in an ocean of terror. Then I stood, every muscle screaming in protest, and walked out of the ICU toward the family waiting area. And there she was, my mother, in her designer coat, hair done up like she was going to a brunch, tapping her foot on the floor. No tears, no fear, nothing in her face but a pinched impatience, like I'd been late to a PDA meeting. When she saw me, her mouth twisted, that familiar disgust I'd grown up learning to recognize.
There you are, she snapped.
Did you hear what I texted you? I was so stunned I couldn't even answer. The world felt off balance, the floor tilting beneath me. Mom, I finally whispered, Daisy is on life support. She might die. She didn't even flinch, didn't even blink. And your niece has a class party tomorrow. She shot back, her tone scolding like I'd forgotten to do my chores. If you don't show up with those cupcakes, you will humiliate this family. I swear something in me broke right then. Something fragile and stupid and loyal that had kept me tethered to them all these years. Before I could speak, my sister stepped around the corner, arms crossed, rolling her eyes like a bored teenager. God, can you not make everything about you for once? She spat. Kids get banged up every day. Daisy will be fine. But what about Madison's party? You promised you'd help. I looked between the two of them, my mother and my sister, these women who should have been my family, my protectors, my support. All they saw was a free babysitter who'd failed their perfect script. And in that moment, everything changed for me. Because as much as I was terrified to lose Daisy, I realized I had already lost them. And maybe that was the best thing that could have happened. My hands were shaking so hard I had to grip the chair beside me to stay upright. They stood there, my mother, her lips pressed into a thin line of scorn, and my sister, checking her phone as if this was the most boring argument in the world, and I felt something inside me turn to stone. You want me to bake cupcakes? I repeated slowly, while my daughter is fighting for her life. Mom's jaw twitched, a tiny flicker of annoyance, the only crack in her perfectly put-together armor. Daisy will be fine, she snapped. You always exaggerate these things. You love the drama. Madison's party is important. She deserves a normal day. Normal. As if Daisy nearly dying was a slight inconvenience. As if her granddaughter, lying unconscious with tubes down her throat, was just some minor annoyance in their social schedule. Mom, I said, voice so low it barely scraped past my lips. I am not bringing cupcakes. I am not leaving this hospital. My sister scoffed, loud enough that heads turned from across the waiting area. There you go again, making everything about you. Why can't you just help? You're so selfish.
Selfish.
That word crashed through me, like glass shattering against my ribs. I had been their everything since I was old enough to walk. Babysitter.
Peacekeeper.
Backup mom to everyone's kids. Free therapist to everyone's meltdowns. And now, even with my own baby clinging to life, they still saw me as nothing more than the help.
No.
I'm done, I said, hearing the finality in my own voice. I'm done. Mom's eyes went wide, like a child being denied a toy for the first time in her life. What does that mean? She hissed. I looked her right in the eye, a calm settling into my bones. It means I'm not your convenience anymore. I'm not your stand-in mother, or your maid, or your bank. I'm Daisy's mom, and she comes first. Mom's lips trembled, fury boiling up behind her eyes. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? I laughed then, raw and hollow. Everything you've done for me? Like a slideshow, my mind flashed with every time they left me to fend for myself. Every time they dumped their kids on me. Every time they told me I was worthless unless I was of use to them. You have done nothing for me, I said. And you will never use me again. And before they could spit more poison at me, I turned and walked back into Daisy's room, letting the door swing shut behind me with the finality of 1,000 slammed doors. I chose my daughter. I chose me. And I had no regrets. The beeping of Daisy's monitors was steady, like a heartbeat I was borrowing to keep myself grounded. I stepped back to her bedside, trying to steady my hands as I brushed a loose wisp of hair away from her forehead. Her skin was so pale, It barely looked real. I pulled the tiny teddy bear from where it had slipped under the blankets, tucking it back into her arm. My mind wouldn't stop replaying their words.
Selfish.
Drama queen. Ruining everything.
No.
I looked down at Daisy, this perfect little girl who had done nothing wrong except trust me to protect her, and I knew exactly what I was fighting for. Her. And myself. I sank into the plastic chair, breathing slowly, as a nurse stepped in to check Daisy's lines. The nurse, a soft-spoken woman named Nia, touched my shoulder with real compassion, the kind of care I'd begged for my whole life but never found in my own family. "She's holding steady," Nia said gently. "We're giving her everything we can." I nodded, blinking back tears. "Thank you," I whispered. She hesitated, as if she wanted to say more, then leaned in closer. "Family is tough," she murmured. "I heard part of what was happening outside. Please don't let them shake you." I felt something hot behind my eyes, gratitude so sharp it hurt. "Thank you," I repeated, voice cracking. When she left, I sat there alone, breathing in Daisy's soft, rhythmic, machine-assisted breaths. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through their messages again. "Your sister is devastated you won't help. You're so cruel. Madison's teacher already asked if you're bringing the cupcakes."
Cupcakes.
Like sugar and sprinkles could ever outweigh a child fighting to live. I closed my eyes and made a choice right there that I should have made years ago. I blocked their numbers. Every single one.
Dad. Mom.
My sister. One by one, their digital chains disappeared. For the first time in my life, their constant, buzzing expectations went quiet. Daisy let out the tiniest sigh in her sleep, and it felt like a miracle. Like the world giving me a sign. I reached for her tiny hand, careful of the tubes. "I'm here," I whispered. "I will always be here for you. And only you." That was all that mattered. That was all that would ever matter. Because they might have lost me forever, but my daughter would never have to question that I chose her, no matter what. The night stretched on in that endless, fluorescent-lit haze only hospitals seem to know. I barely moved, eyes fixed on Daisy's chest rising and falling with the ventilator, each precious breath a prayer. Around 3 a.m., I stood to stretch, my spine aching, mind raw from hours replaying every second of the accident, every panicked text from my so-called family. But when I checked my phone, it was blissfully silent. I'd blocked them all. And it was like the air itself had changed, somehow easier to breathe without their endless demands crowding my lungs. I stepped out to the vending machine and got a bottle of water, trying to ignore the guilt that kept trying to creep back in. That voice they'd trained into me my whole life. "You're selfish. You're ungrateful. You ruin everything." But I wasn't selfish. I wasn't dramatic. I was a mother fighting for her child. And that was stronger than any guilt they could throw at me. When I came back into the room, the nurse was adjusting Daisy's monitors. "Stable so far," she reassured me, smiling kindly. I nodded, swallowing the tears again. I sat, reached for Daisy's tiny hand, and held it gently. That's when the social worker came in, polite and hesitant, holding a clipboard. "Miss Martin," she asked softly. I straightened, ready for another blow, another problem. "Your parents and sister have been demanding to see Daisy," she explained carefully. "They've been quite loud in the lobby. We wanted to check with you before allowing them back." A bolt of cold certainty went through me. "No," I said immediately. "They are not allowed in here. My daughter doesn't need their stress." She nodded. Understood. But I saw the question in her eyes, the curiosity, the quiet why. Behind her professional calm, I sighed, my voice trembling. They don't believe she matters. They wanted me to bake cupcakes for another kid's party while my daughter is on life support. The social worker's face fell, stunned and appalled. "Oh," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." I nodded, too tired to keep explaining. "Please keep them away," I repeated. She made a note, then squeezed my shoulder gently. "I will. You focus on Daisy." As she left, I turned back to my little girl, whose fingers twitched ever so slightly in my palm, like she was fighting her way back to me even now. "We're okay," I promised her, a new, fierce resolve blooming in my chest. We don't need them. We never did. And for the first time since the accident, I actually believed it. By morning, the sun broke through the hospital windows, painting everything in a pale, washed-out light. I hadn't slept, but I felt clearer than I had in years. My mom's final words echoed in my head like a curse. You always ruin everything with your selfish drama. And my sisters. Kids get hurt all the time. My father, the worst of them all. Your niece's party is more important than your attention-seeking. It was like their voices had been tattooed on my soul since childhood, and this was the first time I was tearing them off. Daisy stirred a little, her eyelids fluttering, her tiny lips parting in a half-dream. I leaned forward so fast my chair nearly tipped. "Baby," I whispered, praying. "Mama's here." She didn't open her eyes, but the heart monitor picked up a stronger rhythm. I clung to that, letting it flood through me like oxygen. "Stay with me," I begged in my head. "I will fight for you. I will protect you from everyone, even them." There was a knock at the door, cautious. Nia, the nurse, poked her head in with a gentle smile. "I told security not to let your family back," she said softly. They were furious, but they left. A shaky relief passed through me. "Thank you," I breathed. She came closer, adjusting Daisy's fore, then gave me a sad, searching look. "Families can be," she started, choosing her words carefully, "complicated." I laughed, the sound too harsh for a hospital room. "That's one word for it." She hesitated, then surprised me. "My mom was the same," she confessed. It took me a long time to draw the line. I felt something uncoil in my chest. It was the first time I'd heard someone understand. "It feels wrong, doesn't it?" I asked. "Choosing your own kid over them?" Her eyes softened with real empathy. "It only feels wrong because they trained you to believe it was." I swallowed hard, tears stinging. "They trained me so well." Nia squeezed my hand. "They trained you, but you can retrain yourself." For her. I looked at Daisy, her tiny face finally peaceful, the machines keeping time for her heart. For her.
Yes.
Every boundary I set, every door I slammed shut, every time I said no, it was for Daisy. So she'd grow up knowing she was enough, that she was safe, that her mother would choose her every single time. Nia left, and I leaned over my daughter, brushing my lips against her temple. "You're going to have a better life than I did," I whispered. "I promise." And I meant it with every cell of my being. The day crawled by, hours marked only by nurses checking vitals and the dull ache in my back from sitting so long in that hard plastic chair. I refused to leave Daisy's side. Every time her monitor beeped a little off rhythm, my breath caught like a trap in my chest. I prayed to every god, every spirit, every scrap of hope that she'd pull through. When visiting hours opened again, I braced myself for another scene, half expecting my parents to come storming and pass security. But they didn't. Instead, my phone lit up with a string of voicemails, their words sharp even through the screen. "How dare you block us? You've embarrassed this entire family. You're making a spectacle again." A spectacle. As if me holding my baby's hand while she fought to live was some kind of theater. I scrolled through each message, numb. It felt almost like reading a script I'd heard 1,000 times, the same recycled insults dressed up in new panic. And with every line, I felt stronger. Because they no longer had a hold on me. I could choose Daisy over them, and no one could stop me. The doctor came in mid-afternoon, a soft knock before he entered. His face was careful, professional, but there was a glimmer of something gentler in his eyes this time. "Ms. Martin," he said, "Daisy is showing signs of breathing on her own. We may be able to start weaning her off the ventilator tonight." My knees nearly buckled. She's getting better?" I choked. He nodded, with the faintest hint of a smile. "She's a fighter, your daughter." I sank back into my chair, sobbing, but they were tears of relief this time, not terror. I leaned forward, resting my forehead against Daisy's tiny shoulder, and let the tears soak into the blanket. "You're so strong," I whispered. "I'm so proud of you." She was teaching me what strength really looked like, what surviving meant. Not bending, Not apologizing for existing, not performing someone else's script. Living, breathing, fighting back. As the doctor left, I caught a glimpse of myself in the reflection of the window. My face was tired, drawn, but I saw a spark I hadn't recognized in years. A woman who would burn the entire world down to protect her child. And I would. No matter how many voicemails they left. No matter what lies they spread about me. No matter who tried to tell me I was wrong. They could keep their parties and their polite facades. I would keep Daisy. I would keep my peace. And I wouldn't trade that for all the cupcakes and fake apologies in the universe. Night fell again, casting long blue shadows across the hospital floor. Daisy's breathing had grown stronger, the ventilator's settings lowered, her own small lungs taking on more of the work. The nurse explained it to me gently, a hopeful note in her voice. "She's fighting her way back," she said, adjusting Daisy's oxygen line with the same tenderness I wished my family had ever shown me. I nodded, voice gone from crying so many tears, my shoulders finally letting go of some of their tension. Because this was all that mattered. I took Daisy's tiny hand in mine and thought back over everything. Every birthday they'd overshadowed. Every time they called me dramatic for showing emotion. Every time they demanded I parent their children while they lived their picture-perfect lives. Every time I'd sacrificed a piece of myself to keep their fragile illusions intact. No more. The messages still came, though less frequently now, each one a final claw at my resolve. "We'll never forgive you. You chose wrong. You've abandoned us." But they were wrong. I hadn't abandoned anyone. I had chosen the only person who ever truly needed me, who loved me without strings, without expectation. I chose Daisy. The nurse stepped in quietly, lowering the lights for the night. "You should rest," she urged kindly. "We'll watch her. She's stable." But I shook my head, refusing to leave. I'd spent too many years stepping away from the people who needed me, trying to please the ones who never would. "I'll stay," I told her. "She'll see me here if she wakes up." The nurse smiled, something like respect shining in her eyes. "Then we'll bring you a pillow," she offered. When she left, I curled up in the chair, Daisy's hand still in mine. Our fingers tangled like roots growing back together after being torn apart. My phone sat silent on the table, notifications turned off, the world beyond this room distant and unimportant. In the morning, Daisy's eyes fluttered open, bleary but bright, fighting her way to me with a tiny, hoarse voice. "Mama?" My heart shattered and healed all in one breath. "I'm here," I whispered, leaning in, tears blurring everything. "Mama's right here." And I would be for every day of her life. Because I had finally chosen what mattered. I had finally chosen us. And no one, not Mom, not Dad, not my sister, not the weight of their twisted expectations could ever take that away again. I kissed Daisy's forehead, breathing in the sweet, fragile, alive smell of her. This was what I'd fought for. This was why I'd burned every bridge and slammed every door. It wasn't selfish. It wasn't drama. It was love. Real love. And for the first time in my life, I felt free.